Welcome back to Never in Reverse podcast. Today we've got a special guest whose story's testament is beyond powerful.
At the end of that trial, I was found guilty of 7 counts of white-collar crimes and sentenced to 7 years of incarceration in a federal prison.
His trials, tribulations,
Caused so much pain to those that I love.
from a very successful trial attorney and the white-collar crimes that led him to years in prison, to resurrect himself as a no BS executive coach for over 30 years with a very successful record in leading companies with over $1 billion in revenue. I know you're already wondering who this special guest is today that's going to share his powerful story. Love to welcome to the show, Mr. Paul Glover. Here we are, Never in Reverse. I am your host today, no Jeremy, Doug Cox. I get to take the reins here, but no, we've got a very special guest today. This is going to be an exciting conversation. And Paul, thank you for joining us this morning.
Doug, it's obviously a pleasure to talk to you and also to talk to your audience. So I've been looking forward to it. Also, you sent me out some very interesting questions that caused me to ponder.
Oh, well, we'll get to those here in a moment. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Paul Glover, you can find some information on him and his story. PaulGloverCoaching.com. Got a book out there, Workquake. Would love to hear more about that and what's kind of led you into this journey. Paul, first off, I gotta ask you, where did you hear about Never in Reverse and what intrigued you to kind of reach out to us, if you mind me asking?
Not at all. No, you were actually recommended from another podcaster that I'd done an episode with. And at the end, I always ask, do you think that there would be another podcast that would be interested in what I have to say, the conversations that we had? And they recommended you. I have to admit, I don't remember it exactly, but that's how I came to contact you.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
No, and it's, again, I'm excited to dive into today's topics. But first off, I guess, some of you reside in Chicago, correct?
Yes.
Have you spent most of your professional career in time in the Chicago metro area or thereabouts? Sure.
Or yeah, I moved to Chicago from Florida actually, and went to college in Chicago, DePaul University. Came back after Vietnam and decided that I was going to make it my home. And loved Chicago and married a suburbanite and have a 2 sons, 6 grandchildren, and decided. Well, by the way, once we have 6 grandchildren, I could leave. My wife's not, and we've been married 43 years, and actually more than that. We multiply our time together by the 5.5 years I was in prison, because we think that actually counts for more years. So,
gosh, yeah.
We're actually celebrating our silver. So
there you go. And you mentioned Vietnam. Did you served in the military?
I did serve in the military. I was drafted, served in the military. Did my 2 years of service, and then came back home to Chicago.
Well, and thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
I have an utmost respect for veterans. Your story, Paul, I mean, I'm not even going to try to unravel this. For a listener's perspective, viewer's perspective, I'm excited to, dive into some of these conversations and topics, but, kind of tell us, what your journey's been about. I mean, obviously, an attorney, some time spent in the legal system, obviously, and then things maybe derailed from there and kind of went a different direction that ultimately led you to where you're at today, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I believe everybody's journey through life is a combination of experiences, both good and bad, that structure where you go, the direction that you take. And you mentioned I became a trial attorney, federal trial attorney in Chicago, and loved it. I just was enthralled with being a trial attorney. I also tell people, if someone had said, go to law school and do trust and estates, I would have cut my throat with a rusty spoon. So, so, and the concept of being a trial attorney is all about performance,
Yeah.
and being a good storyteller. I created a career based on my ability to convince the jury to go on a journey with me. And it would be a journey. I would always call it the hero's journey, because I wanted them at some point to recognize that my client who was usually guilty, was a recovering scoundrel. And interestingly enough, people love recovering scoundrels. By the way, I am one. So all I can tell you is that if you can tell the appropriate story, then I was very successful at doing that, taking the jury with me on this journey. And I love the concept. I also believe that being a trial attorney is close to combat. You have
Oh, I bet.
you have an adversary on the other side who's equally as skilled. You have a judge who's really the referee, and I say it's often like a cage match. and,
Oh,
and at some point, someone prevails, and your ability to do that is how you are deemed as successful. And I enjoyed the performance. I also enjoyed the adrenaline hit. And when I wasn't at trial, I was not a happy person. I needed that adrenaline all the time, and if I didn't get it, I sought it. And the way I sought it was I associated with my clients who were, to be kind, disreputable.
yeah.
And to belong to that club required the initiation of being a part of their activities, their illegal activities. And I did that. I was a bad guy
Mm-hmm.
wannabe. And at some point, I came to the attention of the federal government, the FBI. And at some point, they had enough evidence to have me indicted
Oh,
and then
wow.
tried. And at the end of that trial, I was found guilty of 33 counts, 7 counts of white collar crimes, and sentenced to 7 years of incarceration in a federal prison. That takes me
Wow.
up to the transition and the transformation that occurred after that.
Unbelievable. If you mind me asking, the charges as it related to the white collar crimes, for white collar crimes is pretty broad. I mean, it could be money laundering, embezzlement. It could be many different things. If you mind me asking, what maybe were the convictions just for
Well,
our
you just
listeners? And
not at all.
I'm hoping I'm not hitting too much of a
No,
sensitive
no.
point here, but
Doug,
what the involvement,
I made the decision long ago that if I were going to tell my story and be effective, that I had to be as honest and clear about my behavior and the consequences that came from that as possible. So no, there were 33 counts originally. The jury found me guilty of enough counts to put me in prison for 7 years. The accounts I was found guilty of were kickbacks, embezzlements, money laundering, and threatening government witnesses. So that was what I was found guilty of and sentenced to 7 years.
unbelievable. And obviously you've had a rock bottom moment. It sounds like in through, those experiences and probably failures in your mind that ultimately where you rebounded. What was that failure, that moment that, kind of led you down this next journey in career path and direction in that fashion?
Well, I went to prison. I was 48 years old. So my career obviously was ruined as a lawyer. I would never practice law again, the profession that I love. But
Yeah.
even more tragic was the fact that my family didn't know I was a crook. And it was a well-publicized 2 trials. The first trial was a hung jury. The second trial, I was found guilty. And at that time, of course, then it was revealed to my family, my community, that I was indeed a crook and I was going to go to prison. And so the emotional devastation and also the financial devastation. I basically destroyed my family, but as bizarre as it sounds, they didn't throw me out.
Mhm.
They allowed me to remain a member of the family. Like you said, my wife and I have been married now 43 years. So I went to prison, and for the first 2 years of incarceration, I engaged in revenge fantasy. I accepted
I
no
see.
accountability or responsibility for the things that I had done or the fact that I had put myself in prison. I continued to think about how when I got out, I was going to get even with everybody who was
Mhm.
in prison.
I could
But I can tell
understand
you
that, yeah.
I'll tell you the tipping point moment. My 50th birthday, I celebrated in prison. And I can remember as if it were last night, laying in my bunk, thinking about the fact that I was 50 years old. I still had 5 years of incarceration to do. And I didn't know whether I was going to be able to make it. And at that point, I decided that the only way I was going to make it was to accept accountability for what I had done and change who I was. And at that point, I started that transformation that took all of that next 5 years. When I got out, I recognized a few things. I was a 54-year-old white guy, ex-con, and my career of possibilities were extremely limited. And so I decided that my experiences actually gave me the qualifications to coach. Because
Mhm.
I looked at leaders and I said, they suffer from a lot of the tendencies that I had before I committed the crimes or when I did, and finally before the transformation. And so I took the storytelling aspect of my career and also being a critical thinker, lawyers critical thinking. And I took the
Understandable.
concept of how I was going to survive the failure of my life. That was entirely on me. I mean, I blame no one else for this. How could I? These were all voluntary acts. No one forced me to do these things. I chose to do them. And I decided that the concept of failure and the ability to recover from it was something that leaders avoided. When they failed, they didn't accept responsibility. They blamed others, or they ignored it, avoided it. And I thought, well, all right, I am the subject matter expert in failure. Completely destroyed my career, destroyed my life, but I recovered. And so the concept that I have is that failure is not final, and you can recover if you decide to do so. But the first thing you have to do is accept your responsibility for the failure. So that's how I got through that 5 years. But I can also tell you that I came to the conclusion I couldn't do it on my own. Trying to transform your life is difficult at best. And we always talk about being self-aware.
Right?
Self-awareness is like looking in the mirror and seeing who you are. The problem is we don't see who we are. We see who we want to be.
Mm.
Self-awareness only takes
Yeah.
us so far when it comes to transformation. I needed an outside support that would give me the truth. I call it the gift of truth. And that's what I provide as a coach, by the way, the gift of truth. And that first person that I enlisted was my wife. And she would come down to visit me. Debbie came down once a month without fail, and we would spend a day and a half in the visiting room with 150 other inmates and their families. And yeah, she stayed with me for that 5.5 years. And so after 2 years, when I made this decision about transformation, I sat down with her when she next visited and I said, I need you to help me, to support me in this endeavor.
Yeah.
And she said, no. Yeah, exactly.
Really?
The look on your face was the look on mine in the visiting room,
Oh
because
my
here I was
God.
bearing my soul to her, saying, I need your help. I know I love you. I know you love me, and I need you to support me. And she said, no.
I've got chills right
It's
now.
kind of, no.
And I can't imagine you being in the situation that you're in, and this is not the response you
Exactly.
anticipate when this woman knows you almost as well as you know yourself.
And that's exactly what she said. She said, look, I know you as more than you know you. And let me tell you, I know how you're going to respond to this. She said, I'm going to tell you something you need to do to go through this transformation, and you're going to go into lawyer mode. And we're going to have a debate and an argument. And at the end, it's going to be a struggle. And she said, if you think I'm going to drive down here 5.5 hours to sit in this visiting room and fight with you, you're wrong. And she got up and left. And
No
I spent the
kidding.
next 30 days waiting for her to come back.
Yep.
That conversation rotated through my head every day, every hour. And when she came back, sat down in the visiting room, I said, tell me the rules. Your rules, not my rules. Tell me the rules. And she said, I've been thinking about this, and I'm going to tell you that you're going to need to do 3 things between our visits. And I'm going to tell you what they are so that you understand their importance. And I can explain that to you. But she said, I don't want to have a conversation about this. I don't care whether you agree with me or you don't agree with me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to tell you what they are. And when I come back in 30 days, you had better done something with those 3 items.
Wow.
And she said, and by the way, the first time I come back and you have it, we'll not do this again.
Oh, so she had a game plan. She had a game plan.
Absolutely. And again, It was based on her intimate knowledge of me.
Yep.
But obviously, faced with that choice, there was no choice. I mean, I recognized that if she didn't support me in this, I wasn't going to make it. I would not survive the prison experience.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and you're completely on your own.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you're not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our deal was she would tell me at the end of the visit, we would have a day and a couple of hours on the night. She'd show up on Friday night. We would visit on Saturday and then Sunday for half a day. Then she would drive back 5.5 hours back to Chicago. And so our agreement was that we would not do this until the last hour of the visit.
Oh.
And the last hour of the visit, she would say, here are the 3 things that you need to concentrate on between now and our next visit 30 days from now. And at the end of it, when I show up, you better tell me what you did. Something positive with these 3 things. And she said, and her deal was this. She said, when I give you these 3 things, there's only one thing you can say. What do you think it was?
I agree.
Well, not even that. It was thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was it. No more discussion. Don't talk about it. She would then get up and leave.
Wow.
And so that was the structure of transformation, and it worked. Right.
So is this where a lot of this no BS mindset was
absolutely
the influence of that? I know a lot in your coaching, you talk of this no BS mindset, as a philosophy, an approach, in executive training, but it sounds like your wife was the one. It's the real influencer behind this narrative and this mindset in your coaching style.
Yeah, and
correct?
She absolutely was. And by the way, I tell everyone in my coaching program, I will not tell you to do something, have an opinion about something, unless I've already done it. And I did it. That was the no BS approach to transformation. And so when I tell leaders, if all you're interested in is learning to be a better speaker, I'm not your coach. If you're learning to transform and to create a legacy, I'm in. And I had a client. I asked him for a testimonial, and we've been working together for over a year. I said, like a testimony? He said, absolutely. He said, I'll give you 2. You pick which one you want. I said, sure. He said, Paul is an acquired taste, like cyanide. I said, I don't think I'm going to use that one. He said, what's the second one?
What's number 2?
That's right. What's the second one? He said, Paul is a Sherpa. He will get you to your mountaintop, but he will not carry your pack.
Wow.
That is my coaching process, and that's saying right there. I will get you where you want to go, but I'm not carrying your pack. You're going to have to do the work. If you don't do the work, then why should I care?
Right.
Right. So, that's.
And how are you going to experience the journey? How are you going to learn and carrying your own pack and through
Yeah.
your experiences, I can show you, I can give you the guidance, but you've got to wade through it yourself. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I'll give you the support. I'll give you the encouragement. And I'm also going to give you a boot up your ass if you're not doing it,
Right.
because that's my job. So yes, that was the creation of the concept of the no BS performance coach, is that it
Gotcha.
worked for me, and it's hard,
Mhm.
takes time, very painful, because you have to go through the self-awareness, but you also have to accept the gift of truth about who you really are, not who you think
Right.
you are.
Right.
So yeah, that was the deal. I can tell you, I had never been of service in my life before I went to prison, and I was about me.
Mhm.
Right? I
Yeah.
would take care of my family. I love my family, but I was about me. Did I care about my clients? Sure. But what I really cared about my clients was that they gave me the opportunity to do what I wanted to do and to be paid for it. So being of service was something that I'd never done. And one of the things that I decided to do to be of service, to fulfill one of these requirements, was to teach GED in prison. Now, in prison, if you don't have a high school diploma, you're required to go to GED class.
Oh, interesting.
So you got it.
I didn't know that.
This is one of those requirements, and you're not required to pass the test, but you will stay in that class until
You're going to
pass it.
attend.
So after one of Debbie's visits, I went to the head of the education department. I said, I want to teach GED. Now remember, at this point, 50-year-old white guy, and the guy laughed at me.
Yeah, but you're well educated, well qualified in a lot of cases.
The
Yeah.
reason he laughed at me was he said, "You do understand who's in this class?" He said, "It's young black guys who are drug dealers from East St. Louis." He said, "They will eat you up." And I looked at him, and now I'd been down for 2 years, right? And so
Uh-huh.
I had at least I could have the conversation. I said, "Listen, I've had juries tougher than this group, so let me tell you, I'm not afraid of it." He said, "Hey, I can't find anyone to teach this course, so absolutely." So I went in on day one as 14 young blacks, and between 18 and 23,
Wow.
and they're in the prison system. And by the way, recidivism in the prison system is over 80%. So the odds are they're coming back. And so I came in and I had a box with 14 decks of playing cards. Everybody in prison plays cards. In fact, you play cards so much that you wear the numbers off of them. So a brand new pack of play cards was a deal, right?
Oh, I
And
bet.
so I stood in front of the class and I said, "Look, those that are interested in passing GED, stay over here. If you're not interested, take a pack of playing cards, go over there, play cards. Don't interrupt the class." And 12 of them grabbed their cards, went over there. Two of these guys were thinking,
Wow.
"Can't wait to hear what this idiot has to say," right? So
Right.
we could laugh at him. And I picked up the GED book, which at that point looked like a telephone book. It was that thick. And I said, "Can the two of you read?" And they both go, "Well, yeah." I said, "Okay, take your book, read. If you need help, come and talk to me and I'll give you help." I said, "Because I'm not going to be here to teach you GED. The book's GED." I said, "I'm going to talk to you about not coming back, about getting out and not coming back here." I said, "Because most of you are going to come back. If you want to come back, go play cards. If you don't want to come back, I'm going to help you not do that."
Mm-hmm.
And that was the conversation that I had. From that point on, I taught GED for the remainder of my incarceration. And did they come back? Yes, not all of them, though. Not all of them. And we had a discussion about, you're going to go back to the same environment. You're going to be faced with the same opportunities to earn a living, because this was economically depressed East St. Louis, where no jobs. So what are you going to do so that you don't go back to that environment, do the same things that got you incarcerated, and come back for more time, probably at a higher security institution? And that was our conversation.
So is that those moments there? I sorry to interrupt, Paul,
No,
but
not
I
at all.
mean, was this the time and the breaking point where you realized that you had leadership skills to educate and influence and entice change
Yeah.
in individuals?
This was the
And then this was dipping your toes in the
absolutely.
pool.
If I could influence this group, if I could help
Yeah.
them change, clearly there was nobody else that was going to be that defensive or in that situation where they had few options. You know,
Wow.
leaders have options. So yes, this was a test
Wow.
of the opportunity to become a coach.
So this was the birth. This was the resurrection of Paul Glover right
It
here.
was. It's where I made the decision, you know, at that point, not immediately, but obviously as I started to work through this, and I continued to think about what am I going to do when I get out? I mean, I'm not going to practice law. Who's going to hire me? Nobody would. So I decided that I had the qualifications plus the concept that would work if I could find the right leaders, because most leaders do not want to get the truth.
Yeah. And how do you face those uncomfortable situations with leaders in trying to help a damaged trust scenario? I mean, what's your philosophy? What's your approach when you have leaders that are in these positions that they don't have trust of the ones beneath them, where they see them as an influential leader?
Well,
I mean, how do you?
I have a very strict program. And by the way, 80% of those who are referred to me don't do business with me because I try to dissuade them from being in the program. And I tell them how I said, it's just going to be very uncomfortable for you. And if you're not ready for the gift of truth, you're not ready to be in this program. And if I discover you're not ready or that you're trying to bullshit me, you're out of the program.
I'll sniff it out. Yeah.
I said, I have
Be vulnerable.
Very highly attuned BS antenna. And I will know, because you know what you're going to do? And by the way, the concept, my coach, I won't go into too much detail, but the reality is the first thing I do is a 360-degree review. Because I really don't want to hear the leader tell me how good they are, what their problem is, whatever. What I want is I want some objective third-party information so that it's not my opinion. It's somebody else's that actually works with them or for them or who they work for. And based on that information, we now have as unbiased a opportunity to look at your skill set, to look at who you are, how you lead. And most of the time, that's a shocker, by the way. I always give I've been doing this so long that I've got really good examples. I'm going to give you one that unfortunately is more prevalent than I'd like. Leader did the 360. The information came back, and the one thing that we always start with is communication. Because communication is obviously, if you don't have that, you can't do anything else, and you can't build trust unless you communicate. So, of course, it came back that, and by the way, I also had the leader do the same assessment. So for every question he writes down, he says, "Here's my score," and we get to compare it to the group. And so, exactly, so that you see, is it the same? By the way, you got some alignment, or in fact, have you reach yourself higher than they do? Obviously, in communication, that's always the case. This particular leader, out of a score of 5, gave himself a 5. Came back, he was a 2. And one of the remarks was, he believes he's a great communicator because he believes in telepathy. So, if he thinks it, we should get it, right? Right. And so here we go, and he's shocked. You see, he's shocked, and he says, "I need to be able to absorb this." Absolutely. I said, by the way, then we'll start the process of coaching. Right now, we have a skill set issue. A week later, he contacts me and he says, "I want to do the 360 again."
Interesting.
And my deal is you do it at the beginning of the year contract, and then at the end, we do it again. And
An
based
assessment
on
at
that
the end.
outcome is 50% of my compensation is based on outcome. So if we
Gotcha.
haven't achieved the goal, I don't get paid. By
Right.
the way, I'm not coin operated, but I guarantee you money is a motivator. And if you're not doing what I'm saying, what we've agreed, not what I say, but what we've agreed to do, I'm not going to be happy because my skin's in the game.
Right, exactly.
So, and that makes me very much engaged in your success. So
Well,
anyway,
and you've got a vested interest.
oh, absolutely. And so I go, wait a minute, that's not the deal. He says, no, we're only. I said, well, tell me why. He said, well, I met with my team and we talked about the outcome and we agreed that we're going to do this again until we get it right. I said, so let me make sure I understand this. What's right to you when they agree
Right.
with you? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, then we're done. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of leaders, that's the reaction of a lot of leaders when they get the gift of truth. They don't like it and they reject it. They argue it. That would be me. My wife was going to give me the gift of truth and I was immediately going to get defensive and argue with her about it. And that's of course what leaders do because they believe that they're better than they really are. But also, Doug, if you want to find a coach and you're serious, there's an itch that you have to scratch.
Exactly.
There's something that you know you need to do better. And how am I going to do that? And you realize you can't do it on your own. See, a lot of leaders believe that self-awareness that they engage in gives them the information they need to get better. No, it doesn't. Why? Prejudiced, biased. Look in the mirror. What do you see? I see that I'm a good-looking guy who has hair. Well, no, I don't have hair. I just wish I had hair.
Yeah, you and me both.
Exactly. That's why you wear a cap.
Yes.
Anyway, so I'm too much about my program, but yeah, that's
part of what part of our conversation today, because obviously you've got a successful track record in what you've done and coaching in your philosophies and how you peel the layers of the onion back. We're not, and you're right, we're not all 100%, correct or ideal. I mean, we have flaws, we have character flaws, and it's unraveling leadership flaws, and you're unraveling those things. Like, I'm trying to step into someone's shoes here as you're coaching them. You've got to be vulnerable, and you can't put shields up when somebody calls out the chinks in your armor. Do you want to get better? Then you have to be vulnerable.
Duh.
And understand your characteristic flaws and leadership flaws, if that's truly what you're trying to get out of it. I think back of some of the leaders and sales managers and CEOs that I've worked for, and I'm kind of going back in my brain and in history and in seeing some of these characteristic flaws and in someone like you coming in and, unraveling these things in your philosophies of just helping and guidance. They're going to be able to lead in a much better fashion.
And the concept of radical candor is something that people talk about, but people don't really like. And so we all had the buzzwords, right? I mean, we know what we should do. I tell every leader, I guarantee you, you know what you should do. You just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And the concept is that if you don't do it, you can't lead successfully. And whatever your comfort zone is, believe me, you're going to have to get outside it. Why? Well, the volatility of the world today requires adaptability, which normally means change. And leadership is not what it was 10 years ago, and it won't be what it will be 10 years from now. The concept is, can we get you to a position where you're adaptable? And that requires that we look at your strengths and your weaknesses, and we talk about how we're going to improve your skill set. I still think leadership is psychology and skill sets.
100%.
And if you're weak in one of those, then we've got to work on that. But it's absolutely, it can be worked on if you're willing to commit. And so that's it. I mean, I wish I could tell you there's some secret sauce, but there's not. I'm the secret sauce because I'm more than willing to cut you loose. And if you can't handle the pressure from me, you need to cut me loose. Why? Because it's not working. The relationship has got to be a commitment to get to where we both agree you want to go. That's the mountain.
Right.
By the way, if you start off and your thing is, I want to become a professional basketball player and I'm 5'2", I'm like, yeah, not so much. I don't know what to tell you. Go get leg extenders, but we're not going to have a conversation about it. Why? Because that's not possible. So often I have to tell a leader, that's not possible. I'm sorry. If you want to do that, you've got so much to do in front of that it's not going to be capable. From what our one-year contract's not going to achieve that. And by the way, because I've got skin in the game, I will not allow you to be unrealistic. Right?
Right, exactly.
Oh yeah. At the end of the year, I have got to be able to show through the same process of the 360 that you've improved. And therefore, if we've been unrealistic, the odds are that's not going to happen. And I'm not going to take that chance with my money. Therefore, we've got a working relationship where I care, but not that much.
Well, yeah, and you can't lead it down the path of the false narrative, right? I mean, that's not going to do anybody good. Not going to do anybody good.
Continue to tell people what they want to hear, they start to believe it. That echo chamber around leaders is dense because people have learned how to get what they want by giving the leader what they think they want, and that's praise. Look at what a great leader you are. Look at your success story. Oh, my God, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? It's an echo chamber that at some point, if you hear it enough, you start to believe it as a leader.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a part of that.
Because you're not hearing the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. One question here for you. What's one story that captures your philosophy on resilience and second chance?
When you say, well, by the way, I'm the story. I look at where I was and what I had to do. And if you weren't resilient, the ability to recover, resilience and recovery. I actually go farther than that. All right. Talib, Nazim Talib, he's coined a phrase, anti-fragility. I think that the world is so volatile now and so quick to change that resilience is no longer the skill set leaders need, because that means you recover to where you were. That's not good enough anymore. You have to not only recover, but I consider the failure and the process of recovery, using that failure to spring forward. I actually call it failing forward. So my concept is, by the way, leadership is about examples. And so when I talk to a leader, one of the ways that I break down the barrier is to have exactly this conversation we're having about me and my failure. Because I am that example that I say, I have been where you are. I was extraordinarily successful as a trial attorney, and I blew it up. Now, you may not blow it up, but I guarantee you have some accountability for whatever failures you've encountered. So let's talk about what it takes to do the recovery. And I take my process and I tell them, this is how it worked for me. It can work for you the same way, because the failure cycle does not change for people. I've got a 5-step failure cycle that I take leaders through. Because if you don't do the things necessary within this cycle, for instance, you have to do acceptance. People, and by the way, some people say, Jesus, sounds like the cycle of recovery with grief. It is to some degree, because the very first thing that happens is, what are you going to do with the feelings of failure? Because I don't care what you say, you're going to take it personally, or you're going to deflect it to your team. Because a lot of leaders it's not me that failed, it's my team that failed.
Point blame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You will blame someone else rather than accept it. Or we will just say, let's forget that one and move on.
Yeah.
Well, first, nobody forgets it. And second, there's a lesson there. Every failure is a lesson to be learned. And so I put myself out there as the example, and I go, let's talk about where you are in the ability to recover. And we start with the acceptance of the feelings of failure, that have to be dealt with. That's the emotional impact. If you can't do that,
Accountability. You gotta take.
absolutely.
You gotta take that. Yeah.
Accept ownership.
Yep.
Because you own, I guarantee you, if you're part of any failure as a leader or even as a team, you own some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether it was refusal to engage or whether it was just a mistake, bad assumptions, whatever it is, there's a whole list of these we can go through, but you got to own it.
Yep.
And so if that sounds like a weird way to do it, but that is exactly the way I do it, because it leads, if I can use myself, I can lead us into a discussion where, and I tell everybody, I failed catastrophically. It is difficult to look at your failure and say it could be that bad. You feel better now? Well, okay, maybe not. But you go, okay, if you survived this and came out better, I think I can survive this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A living example, through experience in rock bottom, in, having that enlightening moment where you realize your failures, your mistakes, and where I'm going to be vulnerable in that. I'm going to mature from it. I'm going to continuously grow from it, because you're right. Because historically, it repeats itself, and it's no different than, like you said, the individuals that were incarcerated. The roundabouts, the ones that come back in time, and career criminals that wind up back in that, they just stay in that vicious cycle. Well, were you going to take accountability and ownership in your actions to correct that? And I'm sure it's an everyday challenge. As good leaders, I think, recognize that, where, the next day you got to be vulnerable that there could be the next mistake, or the chink in the armor that you got to grow from.
Well, and not only that, you are going to continue to fail.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Recovery and understanding the lesson doesn't mean you don't fail again. Hopefully you don't fail the same way again.
You're prepared.
Yeah. And interestingly, you mentioned the GED folk. Over 50% came back every time. And out of that 50%, half of them would come back into the class. And we would continue the educational process about, all right, this is a failure. You agree, right? Yes. And you know that you were a part of that failure. Yes. Let's talk about learning the lesson.
Yep.
Because there's one there, but if you don't learn, you didn't learn it last time. You know how I know? You're back.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, we would have a animated discussion about, well, I have an excuse. And I would say, first, you're going to have to convince me it's a reason. I don't want if you have an excuse, that's on you. If there's a reason, we need to talk about the reason. And clearly, these young, disadvantaged young black guys, again, they would go back into that environment, and 80% recidivism. So, and by the way, I tell everyone, my job as a defense attorney was not that you be innocent. It was to get you the least amount of penalty.
The least amount, yeah, exactly.
That's all it was. That was considered a victory, right? You're not.
Yeah, exactly.
You know why? Because you're not innocent. And the jury can see you're not innocent. We're just going to make you the recovering scoundrel, so the penalty won't be as difficult.
Exactly. We're going to try to limit this to as minimal as possible.
You can't escape that you're a scoundrel. It's
right.
Anyway, so
your actions led you here.
Exactly. That's part. By the way, I believe you should have to pay a price. There should be consequences for bad behavior. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you know what? It's not effective. I mean, I can tell you don't behave that way again, but if there's no accountability and there's no consequences, in your head, you're like, why not? I got what I wanted, and I didn't have to pay a price.
Exactly.
Pay a price.
Yeah.
That's where the lesson comes in. That's the part of the failure.
That's getting your hand slapped and learning from it.
Oh, hell
exactly. Yeah. Well, Paul, I know we could sit here and go on. I mean, there's just so many things I'd love to keep going on, but we're running short on time here today. And, I can't say thank you enough. Maybe, come back, visit us again. I know there's some other, we could digress on some other topics in discussion, but, I think I love hearing stories like yours and trials and tribulations and overcoming the adversity and making the most of that that challenge and that experience, you know, again, you know, I tip my hat to you and joining us today, and hopefully we can do this again and go into some other topics, because I know there's more in there. I know there's more in here to share.
You're right.
You know, and just for me and as a leader in the positions that I've been in my place of employment and my personal life, I mean, I think there's a lot of life's lessons to be learned through your experiences. You can find us, you know, YouTube, social media platforms everywhere, you know, like, subscribe, leave comments for Paul or ourselves. Go find Paul at paulglovercoaching.com, his book, Workquake. You know, I think there's a lot of life's lessons here for us that we can learn through Paul's experience.
And I'll put it out there. I've got a second book. It only took 25 years. It's called The Prison Lessons.
Oh, boy.
Leadership Lessons Learned the Hard Way.
It was a pleasure having you here today. Again, Paul, thank you. And until next time.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.